What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D here on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Make sure you hit subscribe below and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB and at ETB Network. On tonight's episode, we got a bunch of stuff for you. A bunch of trades went down. Joel Embiid and Luka Doncic both dropped over 70 points. We're going to be going over that. A couple of head coach firings. Adam Silver was just renewed with his extension, and we'll be going over some of the top college games of the week, as we tend to always do. We also want to plug our WolfSpread, who is our new partner for betting and everything in that nature. We're going to be adding betting parts to the show very soon. But we want to once again thank WolfSpread for joining the network, and there'll be much more to come with them. So jumping right into things, Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier headed to the Miami Heat. This trade kind of happened like close to a week ago, so it's a little bit of an older one. But Terry Rozier traded to the Miami Heat from the Charlotte Hornets. Obviously, one of their leading scorers over the last several years. One of their best players over the last several years as well. Rozier is going to be headed to the Heat. In exchange, the Heat sent Kyle Lowry and a 2027 first-round pick to the Charlotte Hornets. Kyle Lowry really is probably not going to play for the Hornets. They're probably going to end up buying out his contract. He's just got a year left of his contract. So this makes things a little bit interesting. But the Miami Heat add another veteran. They definitely have lacked a little bit in the backcourt throughout the season. Tyler Hero has been holding it down, but Caleb Martin as well. Their front court has been pretty stacked, but they definitely have lacked a little bit of depth. Kyle Lowry kind of has lost playing time. He's not nearly the same player that he was before, but I think this was a really good trade for Miami. There was a few teams that were after Rozier. He's on an expiring contract from the Hornets, so he's set to become a free agent this summer. And he's definitely a good veteran piece to add to a winning team. And a team that's trying to compete to win a championship for sure. So I think that this was a very good move by the Miami Heat. I think that he's going to add a lot to the Heat's backcourt, and he's probably going to slot it right in as to being the starting shooting guard. I would not be surprised about that. Duncan Robinson has been kind of up and down. Jaime Jaquez has been a very big plus, though, for the Miami Heat. So that's another guy to look at. But Terry Rozier headed to the Heat. Very good trade, I think, for both teams. And Charlotte Hornets were able to get a first-round pick from it, too. So even though it's 3 years down the road, not bad at all in their sense. Some more interesting news. Joel Embiid and Luka Doncic both dropped 70 points. Joel Embiid dropped 70 points. Luka dropped 73 points this past week. So in a very, very interesting kind of set of events, basically to the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's 81-point game back in 2006, Joel Embiid ended up topping that. There's been very few players since that 81-point game back in 2006 who have even scored 70 points. Devin Booker did it a couple of years ago. Besides that, I think there might have been a couple of others, but Embiid was able to do it. And then just a couple days later, Luka was able to do it, dropping 73 points. And this just goes in to basically showing how much the scoring has gone up throughout this entire year, and like how incredible the scoring has been, and it's at like a historic pace pretty much. It's honestly like amazing how these players are putting up insane points, and Embiid and Luka are the two newest ones on it. I mean, we have 5 or 6 guys, I think, that are averaging over 30 points a game right now, including Luka and including Embiid too, both averaging well over 30 points a game. The scoring in the league is just at an all-time high. Very little, not as nearly as much defense being played, and we have been able to see that well over the years in the NBA. This is definitely this is definitely kind of like a showing of all of that, and kind of how the league has gone over, basically how the league has kind of gone into that movement, and has completely gone into a complete scoring rampage. So very, very interesting. Embiid dropping 70 points, Luka dropping 73 points, came right at the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's 81-point game. So makes things very interesting. Makes things very interesting going forward. Who's going to be the next one to draw this as many points and so on. And some other news, Julius Randle out multiple weeks with a shoulder injury. So Julius Randle, this is a big blow for possibly the hottest team in the NBA right now. The New York Knicks are 30-17. They've been playing exceptional basketball throughout the past couple of weeks. Jalen Brunson has become a stud. He's become a bona fide all-star. He's been absolutely amazing this season, and Julius Randle has been as well. Julius Randle's really been able to hold the team together. But he's going to be out multiple weeks with a dislocated shoulder. Luckily, they had the MRI, and it doesn't look like any structural damage to his shoulder. So it's going to be weeks instead of months, but they're still going to miss several weeks. And the Knicks rebutted with picking up Taj Gibson today, so they were able to land backup power forward to be able to take Randall's spot, and at least for a short period of time. But Randle being out is going to definitely be a blow for the Knicks. They just beat the Hornets last night, but they're going to have a much tougher schedule coming up. So OG Anunoby is going to have to step in and keep playing the way that he's been playing and moving forward. But Julius Randle out multiple weeks with a shoulder injury. Big blow for the Knicks. Hopefully he will be back within the next few weeks. And because if he's out long term, that's going to definitely be a big blow. And then some other news: Bucks replace Adrian Griffin with Doc Rivers. So some head coaching news. We had 2 head coaching firings. We'll go into the other one. We'll go into the other one up next. But the Bucks ended up letting go of first-year head coach Adrian Griffin just 40 games into the season. Absolutely incredible that this kind of was made. I remember getting the alert and was just completely shocked seeing that. Adrian Griffin, Mike Budenholzer just left last season. Adrian Griffin stepped in and got the job to be the new head coach for the Milwaukee Bucks, and they started off the season 30-13. And that wasn't good enough, I guess, for the Bucks front office, because 43 games into the season, Adrian Griffin got the boot, and Doc Rivers was quickly taken away from ESPN analyst duties and will now be head coach once again, but for the Milwaukee Bucks this time. So there's a lot to unwrap here. There hasn't really been too many details besides people saying that Giannis kind of wanted Adrian Griffin out, and there was some type of mix up in the front office or something like that that was holding the team apart. But there's no doubt that a first-year head coach getting fired this quickly is a huge red flag. There's something going on with him, something that just did not mesh with the rest of the team, and they ended up feeling like it was time for him to go. So 1 year, not even just over half a season into his coaching career, Adrian Griffin got replaced by Doc Rivers. And obviously Doc Rivers has a long tenure as an NBA head coach, won the NBA championship with the 2008 Boston Celtics. He was the Celtics head coach, was the Clippers head coach for a while. Most recently was the Sixers head coach, but he was fired. He was let go this past summer and replaced by Nick Nurse, who was previously the Raptors head coach. So he was out of a head coaching job for the time being, but the Bucks feel like that they needed him. So he's going to step in and start running the show now in Milwaukee. Really, really interesting. you know, you don't really throughout Giannis's entire kind of tenure through as being one of the star players in the NBA and being the leader of the Milwaukee Bucks, you really haven't seen too much negative publicity around the team, too many bad situations going on in the locker room or anything like that. It's usually been pretty solid, to be completely honest. And Giannis, he definitely is one of the kind of the more humble all stars in the NBA. So a situation like this definitely makes you kind of scratch your head a little bit and wonder what exactly could be going on and what exactly is is going down with Milwaukee. But there is definitely just something that was not clicking with the Milwaukee Bucks and Adrian Griffin, so they let him go into his first season. And then the other head coaching firing, this one kind of comes as not too much of a surprise. The Washington Wizards let go of Wes Unseld Jr. They didn't completely fire him like I put in the banner, but they are going to move him to a front office position, and one of his assistants is going to take over as interim head coach. Unseld is in the third season since he got hired by the Wizards, and the Wizards have not done anything. They have a terrible team. They're one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're going to definitely get a top 5 pick this upcoming year, but they don't have much talent either. They haven't had much talent the last several years. They had Bradley Beal for a couple of those years, but he was hurt for the majority of those seasons. So Unseld, it was almost kind of like the scapegoat in a way. They decided to move on from him, try to spark a little something. They do have a few veterans on the team, though. You got Kyle Kuzma, who they just re-upped this offseason. You got Jordan Poole, who was the big piece that they got away in the Chris Paul trade. And a ton of other stuff they have like a few other young pieces. You got Denny Avdija, you got Bilal Kalabule, who's actually played pretty well in his rookie season so far. So they do have a few pieces, but they have not performed well at all this year. Second worst team in the Eastern Conference, I believe, only ahead of the abysmal Detroit Pistons. But they decided to let go of Wes Unseld Jr. He's going to be moving into a front office position, though, so all's well that ends well. It's really not a terrible situation for Unseld by any means. So I could definitely see him getting possibly a head coaching job down the road. Again, he's still young. Same with Adrian Griffin. I mean, barring anything that may come out about Adrian Griffin, I think that both of those guys are going to get more shots to be on benches in the NBA and eventually possibly move up to head coaches once again. So those are all definitely some very interesting things that have been going on throughout the league. And the one final piece, little nuggets that you got to go over, Adam Silver gets his extension. So Adam Silver signed an extension as the NBA commissioner that will take him through this next decade, basically. They didn't give specifics, how much he's going to get paid, how many years it is, all that kind of stuff. Did not give specifics about that, but he did get an extension for basically through the rest of the decade. And a lot of people had some negative thoughts about this, including our very own Nick Morgeson. He is not an Adam Silver fan at all. I personally don't hate Adam Silver. There's not really any commissioners that I think any true diehard fans of a league really like Roger Goodell and Rob Manfred are also not liked by anybody either. But I think Adam Silver is not terrible. There's definitely been some things that he's fumbled. There's been some interesting things that he hasn't taken advantage of throughout, and also the in-season tournament. I think personally, honestly, I think the in-season tournament is his worst move as the commissioner of the NBA. I think that just implementing that made no sense. I don't understand what the point of it is. I understand some soccer leagues do that throughout the season, but the in-season tournament, we got to get rid of it. I do not want to see it back next year. It's probably going to be back next year, but I would love to not see it. I was not a fan of it at all this year. I don't think many NBA NBA fans were at all fans of this either. So I think that that's definitely got to go. But Adam Silver is here to stay, basically. And it's going to be interesting to see if he decides to keep his baby, basically, that he decided to bring in. And jumping over from the NBA, we got some college basketball stuff to go over. The new AP poll came out, so obviously we're doing this episode debuting on a Wednesday night rather than a Monday night, so I'm able to go over the newest AP poll that just dropped in college basketball. There was a decent amount of movement. The top 6 remained the same, just about. But a few teams jumped around big time. Wisconsin jumped from 13 to number 6 in the country. Wisconsin's up to 6 in the nation. Iowa State jumped 11 spots from 23 to 12. New Mexico jumped from 25 to 19. And Oklahoma fell 12 spots. They were the biggest faller in the AP poll. They fell from 11 to 23. Duke jumped up to number 7. Kentucky fell all the way to 10, and then Auburn also fell 8 spots from 8 to 16. So there was definitely a lot of movement. There was a lot of interesting wins, a lot of bad losses too. Baylor fell a little bit, even as they're on a 3-game losing streak. They fell all the way down to 18, I believe, which was kind of an interesting move. That they didn't fall down a little further. I honestly thought that they were going to be borderline unranked. Going into this week, I thought that they just have not been good. And I thought that it's possibly top 25. They might completely fall out of it, but it is Baylor. They've had some good wins, so it does make sense that they stay in for a bit. But yeah, there's a few teams. Iowa State and Wisconsin are 2 teams that were completely written off to start the season. I don't think anybody expected true dominance of any of those teams going into the season. But they just keep doing it. And they've been doing it over the last several years. I mean, Wisconsin has not had the sexy roster. Iowa State has not had a sexy roster, and they've just been able to put together winning teams year after year. And they're able to compete to a high level. The Iowa State being in the Big 12. Big 12 is one of the toughest conferences in college basketball, and Wisconsin being in the Big 10. It was definitely interesting. And then the Mountain West, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Mountain West when we go over the top college games of the week in a few. But New Mexico jumping from 25 to 19. We got New Mexico and Utah State from the Mountain West, both in the top 25. We have Colorado State, who's just out, Nevada, who's just out. The Mountain West is very quietly becoming a power conference. And you can 100% make the argument that they've been a better conference than the ACC this year. They've been much more dominant. The ACC has Duke and North Carolina, obviously, who are 2 of the top teams in the nation. But besides those 2, Clemson's been in and out of the rankings. Miami's been in and out of the rankings. They haven't been that great. But the Mountain West has had some good teams. Boise State, too, UNLV. They've had a few very solid teams that have been able to that have caused some really good games in conference play. So if you see some Mountain West games on the conference play schedule, then I would check them out if you're a college basketball fan. You haven't really seen too much of the Mountain West, but we'll actually be going over 2 games that I'm going to prefer this week as we jump into the top college games of the week. Top college games of the week, obviously no games of Monday and Tuesday since we are debuting Wednesday night. So I will start with the slate that goes down on Wednesday. So Wednesday at 8, we've got Florida at number 10, Kentucky. Anytime Florida and Kentucky play each other, that's very notable. So Wednesday night at 8 o'clock on ESPN, those 2 are going to go head to head. Florida has not been in the top 25 at all this year, but they've had a very good season. 14-6 on the year, 4-3 in conference play. They're on a 3-game winning streak. They've beat Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Georgia in that 3-game win streak. They'd lost to Kentucky earlier in the season, the one time that they met. And that was in Florida. This game now is going to be in Kentucky. Walter Clayton's been averaging 15.9 points, and Tyrese Samuel has been averaging 13 and 8. And then Kentucky, on the other hand, 15-4 on the season. They're 5-2 in conference play. They've lost to South Carolina, but they also beat Arkansas. So the SEC has not been very dominant this year. with Kentucky, Auburn, and just a handful of teams in the mix. Ole Miss as good wins, but you have a bunch of teams like South Carolina. Arkansas has not been that great. Alabama's actually back in the top 25 now, so they're doing a little bit better. But there isn't a ton of great quality wins in the SEC conference play, so I think that's kind of what has hurt Kentucky a little bit, falling all the way to number 10 this week, was their loss to South Carolina, because a loss like that is not going to do great. And Antonio Reeves averaging 19.5 points for them. And Rob Dillingham has been a star freshman for them, averaging 13.9 points and 3.8 assists. And then we got a Mountain West game for you guys. Boise State at number 19, New Mexico, which is going down Wednesday night at 10:30 p.m. on FS1. So if you're up late Wednesday night, you want to watch some late college basketball, definitely check out Boise State, New Mexico. This is going to be a really good game. New Mexico has been playing some of the best basketball in the country. Boise State, though, they're 14-6 on the season, 5-2 in conference play. They've lost to Utah State, who is also ranked in the top 25, but they've also beat San Diego State and Fresno State for two of their big wins. Their leading scorer is Tyson Dagenhart, averaging 15.6 points and 5.3 rebounds. And New Mexico, on the other hand, has been one of the sneakiest teams in the country. They're 18-3 on the season, 6-2 in conference play. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now. They jumped from 25 in the country to 19. They beat San Diego State, Utah State, and Nevada throughout that 5-game win streak. So they have some very, very quality wins in that win streak. And their top players, Jalen House has been amazing, averaging 15.6 points. Jamal Mashburn Jr. also averaging 15.6 points, co-leading scorers for the team. And JT Toppin averaging 13 points and 8 rebounds on the season. And then we'll jump into the Thursday games. Number 6, Wisconsin at Nebraska, Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. on the Big Ten Network. Wisconsin's all the way up to number 6 in the country this week. They're 16-4 on the season. They're 8-1 now in conference play. They're absolutely tearing it up in the Big Ten this year so far in conference play. They beat Indiana, Minnesota, and Michigan State were the 3 big wins in conference play. So they haven't played Purdue yet, which is going to be the making for a really big game when they finally match up against each other. AJ Storr has been their leading scorer, transfer from St. John's, averaging 15.9 points. And their big man, Stephen Crowell, has been amazing, averaging 12 points and 8 rebounds on the season. Nebraska, on the other hand, has been a little bit of a sneaky team. They're a team that could sneak into the tournament. They haven't been in the rankings, but they're 15-6 on the year. They're 5-5 in conference play. They have Wisconsin and Illinois this week, which is going to be a big task. They have 2 of the best teams in the Big Ten that they're going to have to go up against this week. So it's going to be a big test for them. Kisai Tominaga, their point guard, has been their star player this season, averaging 13.6 points. So number 6, Wisconsin at Nebraska. This should definitely be a win by Wisconsin, but Nebraska's been a sneaky team, and they've been able to pick off some of the good teams in the nation. So I'm excited for that one. And then jumping into the Saturday slate, we have a completely stacked Saturday slate for you guys. So most of these games are going to be in the Saturday slate. Leading it off, we have number 1 UConn at St. John's Saturday at 12 p.m. on Fox. This is live from Madison Square Garden. UConn, the number 1 team in the nation over the last 3 weeks now. They're 18-2 on the season, 8-1 in conference play, and they're on an 8-game winning streak. They're also going to be playing Providence on Wednesday, so they'll have an extra game under their belt heading into this game. But 8-1 in conference play. They've been tearing up the Big East conference play so far. Tristan Newton has been an absolute stud. He's in the Bob Cousy Award projections right now. He's a sneaky dark horse for Player of the Year. He's leading the team in points, rebounds, and assists, averaging 15.8 points, 6.4 rebounds, and 5.8 assists. He's been doing everything for UConn, and UConn's had a tremendous season because of it. And then St. John's, on the other hand, they're 13-7 on the season, 5-4 in conference play. They beat Villanova, which is probably their biggest win in the conference play so far. They'll be taking on Xavier on Wednesday, so they'll once again have another game under their belt. They also, first time they matched up with UConn at UConn, they lost by 4 on December 23rd. So that's something definitely to note. And to remember that they played them really tough the first time they played them. Now, this game's going to be at the Garden. It's already sold out, this game. And to nobody's surprise, UConn is the reigning national champions, and St. John's with Rick Pitino and all the recruits that they have. They're slowly climbing up the ranks. And then we got another Mountain West game Saturday at 3:30. Number 17 Utah State at San Diego State, which is going to be Saturday at 3:30 on Fox. Utah State has been dominant this year. They're up to 17th in the country now. Right behind them is their other Mountain West team, the number 18 New Mexico. But Utah State 16-2 on the season. They're 6-1 in conference play. They'll be taking on San Jose State on Tuesday before this, so they'll have another game on their belt. Their only conference loss has come to New Mexico. That's why New Mexico is very close to them on the in the top 25. But they've also beat Wyoming and Colorado State. They beat Colorado State while Colorado State was ranked too. So those were a couple of big wins right there for them. And one of the star players in the nation this year is Great Osabor, who is a transfer for them. 18.5 points, 9.7 rebounds. He's been by far their best player at Utah State. He's been superb. And then Ian Martinez, too, has been great, averaging 13.8 points a game. And then San Diego State, averaging 16, it's been 16-4 this season. They're 5-2 in conference play. So they're one game worse in overall rankings and one game worse in Mountain West play this season. So they're 5-2 heading into the game. They beat Wyoming and Nevada, but they also lost to New Mexico and Boise State. They're also going to be playing Colorado State on Tuesday. So they got Colorado State Tuesday, and then they got Utah State on Saturday. So they have a little bit of a tough schedule heading into this week of conference play. Jaden Ledee has been great. Obviously, San Diego State was runners-up last year. We're losing in the national championship to UConn. But Jaden Ledee has been their star player, averaging 20.9 points and 8.7 rebounds. And then by far, actually, you can make an argument for two different games to be the game of the week. But number 4, Houston at number 8, Kansas, Saturday at 4 o'clock on ESPN. This is going to be a big showdown now since Houston is in the Big 12. They've been doing fantastic in their first year in the Big 12. They're 19-2 on the season. They're 6-2 in conference play. They were undefeated headed into conference play. They remain to be a top 5 team. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now, and those wins included BYU, Kansas State, and Texas, which were all pretty solid wins. LJ Cryer, who's their transfer from Baylor, is averaging 15.1 points, and Jamal Shed averaging 12.3 points and 5.8 assists. And then Kansas has been falling a little bit. They're down to 8 in the country. They were as high as number 1 at one point, and then was 2 and 3 for a while. But they're 16-4 on the season. They're 4-3 in conference play. So they've lost a couple of bad ones, including West Virginia, which happened last week, and they lost to Iowa State this week, who's actually been a really good team. That's what kind of caused Iowa State to jump almost 11 spots this week, was knocking off Kansas. But Kansas has been on a little bit of a free fall, so they're going to have to come into this game tough because Houston has not been letting up. They're proving that it doesn't matter if they're in the American Conference or the Big 12, they're going to be dominant regardless. And then Saturday night at 6 o'clock, we have number 16 Auburn at Ole Miss on SEC Network. Auburn keeps rising up the ranks. They're up to number 16 this week. They're 16-4 on the season, 5-2 in conference play. But they've been falling a little bit. They fell all the way to number 16 after they were on an 11-game win streak, but they've lost their last 2 to Alabama and Mississippi State. They'll be taking on Vanderbilt on Wednesday, so they'll have another game under their belt before this. Janai Broome has still been their star player, averaging 15.7 points and 8.6 rebounds. And then Ole Miss is 17-3 on the season, 4-3 in conference play. Their losses were to LSU and Auburn, and their good wins have come against Arkansas and Texas A&M. They were ranked for a couple of weeks, but they fell out of the rankings after their loss to LSU, and they haven't found their way back yet. But Matthew Morrell has still been one of the better players in the nation, averaging 16.6 points, and Alan Flanagan averaging 15.6 points. And then what I think is probably the number 1 game in the country this weekend. Saturday night at 6:30, we have number 7 Duke at number 3 North Carolina. The rivalry, probably the biggest rivalry in college basketball going down. Both of these teams have been dynamic this year. UNC is on an incredible run right now. This is going to be an electric game in North Carolina for these two teams that are just down the road from each other too. Two of the powerhouses of college basketball. Duke, they're 16-4 on the season, 7-2 in conference play. Both of these teams have taken advantage of the weak ACC this year. They've been two of the best in the country, but the ACC doesn't really have anybody else besides them. Clemson and Miami are the next best, but besides that, they have a bunch of flubbers. Duke, some of their last 3 wins have come against Louisville, Clemson, and Virginia Tech. Kyle Filipowski having a great season, averaging 18-9 on the year. Jeremy Roach also having a good year, averaging 13.9 points. And McCain has been playing well, averaging 12.4 points, 4.3 rebounds. And then North Carolina has been completely destructing the ACC. They're 17-3 on the season. They are now 9-0 in conference play. They're on a 10-game winning streak that goes back to before conference play happened. They basically beaten everybody in the ACC except for Duke. So they're going to be going up against Duke, and that's going to be a very interesting one. RJ Davis has been one of the better players in the nation, averaging 21.1 points a game. Armando Bacot averaging 13.6 and 10 rebounds. And Harrison Ingram has been one of the better transfers in the nation, averaging 12.4 points, 8.6 rebounds. And then we have number 12, Iowa State, at number 18, Baylor, Saturday night at 8 o'clock on ESPN2. So this is going to be a really good matchup. Iowa State 16-4 on the season, 5-2 in conference play. They lost to BYU, but they've beaten TCU, Kansas State, and Houston. That's why they rose up. They beat both Kansas and Houston. So that's why they're risen up all the way up to number 12 in the nation this week. Tamim Lipsy has been fantastic. Their leading scorer at 13.9 points, and Milan Momcilovic, averaging 13.1 points, has also been great. Baylor has been sliding a little bit. They're 14-5 on the season. They're 3-3 now in conference play. They've lost 3 straight games. They lost to Kansas State, Texas, and TCU. So they're currently on a 3-game skid. They're playing UCF on Wednesday, so they'll have another game under their belt. They should win heading into this game. But Jacoby Walter has still been their leading scorer at 15.2 points. Langston Love has been great, averaging 11.5 and 2.5 rebounds. And Jalen Bridges averaging 10.6 points and 4.6 rebounds. And then Saturday night, we got number 5 Tennessee at number 10 Kentucky, a second Kentucky game of this week. Kentucky's got 2 big matchups now heading into the week, and it's going to be up against 2 rivals. So Tennessee has been great this season. They're 15-4 on the year. They're 5-1 in conference play. They've beat Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Vanderbilt. And they have South Carolina on Tuesday. Dalton Knecht has been one of the best players in the nation this year. He's been their leading scorer at 19.5 points. Zakai Ziegler also having a great year, averaging 10.2 points and 5.1 assists. And then rounding it out on Sunday, you can argue this might be the top game of the week as well. We got a Big Ten showdown. Number 2 Purdue at number 6 Wisconsin, Sunday at 1:00 p.m. on CBS. Purdue 19-2 on the season, 8-2 in conference play. They're still number 2 in the nation behind UConn. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now. They beat Penn State, Indiana, Iowa, and Michigan in that stretch, and they're taking on Northwestern on Wednesday, so they'll have another game under the belt. Zach Edey is still the front runner for MVP, averaging 23 points and 11.4 rebounds. And one unsung hero is Braden Smith, their point guard. He's been having a tremendous year, 12.1 points, 7 assists, and 5.5 rebounds on the season. He's been absolutely fantastic for them. So that's definitely going to be an exciting matchup. And those are going to be the top college games of the week in the NCAA. And to round things off, we've got a segment that we haven't done yet this season, but with the All-Star break coming up, we're going to go over it. Who's the NBA MVP leader? So this is where things get interesting. So I've got my NBA MVP ladder. My top 5 right now, who I think the top 5 in the MVP race are. At number 5, I have Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's averaging 31 points, 11.7 rebounds, 6.2 assists, 1.3 steals. Obviously, the Bucks have been fantastic this year. He's a reigning MVP, so this is definitely a given. Number 4, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's got to be in everybody's top 5. The Oklahoma City Thunder have been the best team in the Western Conference this season. And once again, after leading the league, after scoring 30 points a game last year, he's scoring 31.3 points this year, averaging 6.4 assists, 5.6 rebounds, and 2.2 steals. And then number 3, I have Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets, obviously, averaging 26.3 points, 12.1 rebounds, and 9 assists. He's having yet another fantastic season. But I have him at number 3. At number 2, I have Luka Doncic. Luka's averaging 34.7 points, 9.6 assists, and 8.6 rebounds on the season. And then currently at number 1, I have Joel Embiid winning back-to-back MVPs. He's averaging 30. He's leading the league in scoring once again, just like he did last year, but he's averaging 36 points a game so far this season. Just like I said before, the scoring has been insanely up in the NBA this year. It's been incredible. He also has 11.4 rebounds to go along with that and 1.8 blocks. But an interesting to look out for, starting this year, Adam Silver implemented a rule that you have to play a minimum of 65 games in order to be eligible for postseason awards. And Joel Embiid's already missed about 10 games, and he has had some injury issues soon. So he is getting very close to missing that 65 game threshold. He's going to have to stay. He's going to have to stay very healthy the rest of the season in order to be able to be eligible for MVP this year. That could very well happen, and then you can kick Embiid out of the ladder. And my next favorite will probably be Luka Doncic to be the MVP. But that's going to wrap things up for this episode. I want to thank everyone who tuned into the the Empty the Bench podcast network, and to everybody who watched at home. You can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Once again, we want to thank WolfSpreads for joining the team. Check them out. They do a fantastic job. If you're into gambling and you don't want to spend money, download WolfSpreads. You can make a league with your friends. Bet as much fake money as you want, and to check out who ends up making the right picks. So we want to thank WolfSpread again for joining us. And that's going to be it for this week's episode of the 3&D. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Once again, like and subscribe on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Talk to you guys soon.